Hello, Trinity Episcopal Church. It's Tuesday, April the 7th, and this is my weekly update and meditation. I hope you enjoy it. On the update front, there are just three items. First, we're in the middle of Holy Week, and you can still participate with us even if you did not get a bag. If you'll simply go to our YouTube channel, you will see a video that's called Holy Week Without a Bag that instructs you on how to gather items in your household so you can participate with us. Secondly, just looking ahead a little bit, on Sunday, April the 26th, we'll be having coffee hour, virtual coffee hour. That'll happen at 9:30 a.m. before our 10 a.m. service. So you'll get instructions about that in This Week at Trinity as well on how to get onto the Zoom call. And lastly, just a bit of news from the outside world. I was very proud to be an Episcopalian when I learned today that the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, where I happened to be confirmed years ago, is being turned into a field hospital to accommodate all the patients with coronavirus as the epidemic worsens in New York City. So I'm very proud to be an Episcopalian with that going on. I said last week in my meditation that I was going to talk more about compassion. So my running definition of compassion is finding God's way to make true meaning in the midst of despair or indifference, and then act on that truth. So finding God's way to make true meaning in the midst of despair or indifference, and then acting on that truth. And I said it involved four things, and the first thing that I want to talk about today is wisdom and discernment. So let's talk about wisdom. Wisdom involves more than knowledge. You need knowledge in order to have wisdom, but it's using wisdom compassionately. And I think the best way I can talk about this is by telling a brief story. So years ago, I had a woman who was 92 who I went to see regularly, brought her communion because she was pretty much shut in. She was a woman of a certain age who had been raised was in her heyday probably in the 40s and 50s, so she was used to male authority. And one day I came to bring her communion, and she was in tears because a doctor, a male doctor, had said to her that she needed a pacemaker. Now, maybe was ready to die. She had lived a long and full life and was quite content with that. And she was beside herself because she didn't know what to do. Now, that doctor might have been acting wisely in terms of prescribing a pacemaker for her in order to make her heart function better, but he wasn't acting very compassionately, looking at the totality of her life and then helping her make a decision. So I got to say to Mamie, if you don't want to have a pacemaker, you don't need a pacemaker. You're 92 years old. You are wise enough to make your own decision. So that's just one idea of the difference between compassion and wisdom. Another thing that wisdom involves is non-dualism. That is dialectical thinking, that things are both and, not either or. And that does not mean things going down into mush or into gray. So it's holding those realities in tension. Things are black and white, true, not true. And that's something that we practice in the Episcopal Church. It's called the via media, so we're quite used to doing it, but learning how to hold things in tension. So thinking about non-dualism or dualism, there are plenty of Psalms in the Bible that are very dualistic, where the psalmist is praying, God, please smite my enemies, make me vanquish them. Not thinking then about the fact that the enemies are praying the exact same thing. God, smite my enemies, which is then me or us, and let me vanquish them. So that would be a dualistic way of thinking. A non-dualistic way of thinking is really found in the Bible in Matthew, where Jesus talks about God making the rain to rain on the unjust and the just, and living in that kind of tension. So that's just a couple of words about wisdom. And then I want to talk about discernment. So discernment is, as it says in compassion, is finding true meaning. And discerning that is one of the core things that we do together. Because discernment involves three things. It involves God, it involves yourself, and it involves the community. So often the stuff that's going on inside of us can be confusing. At least often the stuff that's going on inside of me can be confusing, and it's not clear. And one of the things that really helped me in helping to sort out what's true inside and what's not is a line that Brene Brown originally used, and I sort of modified it a little bit. The line is, the story I'm telling myself is. So something could happen in the outside world. I could have an encounter with somebody. I could be doing something. And then I begin to make up stories about it in the absence of information. So, and when I start thinking about then the story that I'm telling myself about something, then it often becomes clear, that the story I'm telling myself is self-centered, and usually it's full of drama, and it's either me being too much or too little. I can't give an example off the top of my head, but I'm sure you can think of a time when you were telling yourself a story that was not true. So once we're able to sort out what the stories we're telling ourselves are, then we can begin to discover God's Spirit working within us. And that's where then the truth emerges. And then there's a next step to that. It's not enough just to do the internal work. You have to work with community. And if you're an introvert, if you're an intuitive, that means checking your intuition against the community. Is what I'm feeling and thinking true? And if you're a sensate, then that's letting the community help you discern what is true. Because often sensates need feedback in order to figure that out. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of processing information. So discernment is really important when we think about practicing compassion, as we saw with the story of that doctor and my beloved parishioner, Mamie. We want to act compassionately all the time, and that then takes discernment. So that's my brief meditation today on how to act compassionately, think compassionately, and I hope you enjoy it. Again, if you have things that you want me to talk about, just please let me know. My email address is rector@trinitycovington.org. That's rector@trinitycovington.org. I hope that you're having a wonderful Holy Week, and we'll see you in church.